Welcome to episode 7 of the Success Show podcast, where we dive deep into the stories and expertise of extraordinary individuals shaping the landscape of their respective fields. Today's conversation is with Mr. Bijay Gautam. From humble beginnings in Nepal to becoming one of India's top self help podcasters, his journey is a testament to the power of determination and self belief. In this episode, we spoke about a diversity of topics, so stay tuned. Before you start watching, please don't forget to like and share this video and subscribe to this channel and the Ruhaan Mathreja Shorts channel. Follow me on Instagram at Ruhaan Mathreja and at the Success Show podcast. Once again, you're watching the Success Show podcast. Enjoy. Hi, Mr. Gautam. Thank you so much for being on the show. It's an absolute privilege to have you.
Thank you. Thank you, Ruhan. Thank you for having me on the show.
I hope all well. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. Thank you. Thanks for asking. I've moved to Bombay recently, so getting used to Bombay, but I've been
Yeah.
great.
How's it going?
All good. A lot of stuff happening because I'm building a new team in the new
Hmm.
city, and we're working on lots of client projects. So a
Yeah.
lot of stuff happening. I've started from scratch a few months back. So I'm in that building phase, so a lot of action happening, and there are like 20 different things that happens
Yeah.
on a day-to-day basis. But I'm loving the ride. I'm loving the fun.
How are you liking the city in general?
I always loved Bombay as a city because the speed. I honestly feel that this city sort of matches the speed that I have always craved for, which I never
Yeah.
felt in Delhi. But I love the speed at which things happen, and also the kind of professionalism that you see here in Bombay. Particularly in the creative field that I work in, is just
Yeah.
amazing. It blows my mind.
That's great to hear. I'm glad you're actually liking it because, in my hostel, for example, there are a lot of people from Bombay, Delhi, Gujarat, etc. So we always have these battles about, is Bombay better, is Delhi better? And it's endless. So, yeah.
Yeah,
So I wanted
correct.
to, start this podcast by talking to you about, your humble background. I want to know a little more about that. And, your move from Nepal to India, the challenges you faced, and how you basically coped with it.
Yeah, so I moved to Delhi in 2011 because I wanted to study biotechnology in Kathmandu University in Nepal,
Okay.
and I couldn't make it to that entrance. And till that point of time in my life, I never had a academic setback. So that was the first time because I failed at something. Now I can't go to like the university that I wanted, right? And at that moment, I
Hmm.
decided that even if I'm not able to go to the best university, I'm going to be best wherever I go. And that was like a very strong memory that I have even today. I was standing there
Yeah.
looking at the selection sort of announcement board, and and not seeing my name in that list, and telling myself that it doesn't matter even if I couldn't make it to the best university, I'm gonna go to wherever I go, I'm gonna be the best, right? So that's how I moved to India. And out of all the places I've been to, I moved to Haryana because my college, that I chose was in Haryana. And, a lot of my friends back home in Nepal, they used to watch a lot of movies in Hindi. They used to listen to Bollywood songs. So
Hmm.
they could understand Hindi. And I never liked Bollywood or any Indian, like my mom and my sister, they would glued to television watching serials and Indian serials and stuff like that. But I always stayed away from that. I was more influenced by Western music and all that stuff. So I was never into Bollywood and all, right? So and then now here I came. I don't even understand Hindi, and I
Hmm.
went to Haryana, and you can imagine, right? So
Yeah.
I've lived in Haryana. I have really good friends now. But at that point of time, when anybody even came and had a conversation, it felt like, why is this person scolding me? Because of the way people in Haryana generally talk. But eventually I sort of then I had nothing better to do than just like put my head down and study. So that's what I did. And also I remember that promise that I made to myself that I'm going to be best wherever I go. So I was studying, I was doing all of that, and all my life I was an average student. And the first year of my college, I remember the first day when the teacher in my sort of college asked like, hey, what is your average percentage in your 11th and 12th? And I raised up my hand and said 68%. And there were like people in the room who would say like 98% or 95%, 80%. I was like, you look like my competitor. I'm gonna give you a tough competition here. So yeah, to cut the long story short, it was a bit of a cultural shock. I felt that, where did I come? Why am I here within all these people whom I don't know, the culture that I don't understand, nor the language that I understand, and usually, like the colleges and the universities, they are in a very sort of a remote kind of place where there's nothing else, right? It's just like that ecosystem that's built around that university or campus. So I was like, it looks like a village to me. Why am I here? I came all the way to this place. That happened for a few months. But after that, then, I was like, okay, I'm going to put my head down. I'm going to make sure that I top this class. And you can imagine
Yeah,
like 68%, there are 95%, 97%. And I ended up, topping that batch. When the result came out for the first year, I ended up
that's
topping.
great.
So I topped all 4 years of my college, and the second year they also, I won. And then first year I was putting my head down, I was studying. Second year, I said, okay, now that I have created that impression on my teachers, and everybody now know me as a topper, and everybody have now put that label. Now that average label, all my life of an
Has
the
been
average
removed.
student level is now gone.
Yeah,
It's gone now. There's a level of like topper, and all of a sudden, like I was trying to get used to that new identity. Now people are
yeah,
seeing me as like a topper and a smart guy. And then, but
yeah,
all my life in my school, nobody knew me as a topper or talented guy in academics. They knew me as a guy who was really ahead in extracurriculars, right? So I was the guy who would be on the stage. I was the head boy in my school. I used to participate on debate and speech competitions and stuff like that. And then that
yeah.
was waiting to come out, right? So first year, I didn't understand culture. I didn't understand any of that. I said, okay, let me just put my head down and study. And in 1 year, I sort of now, the place, people, everything started becoming familiar. And I said, okay, now it's time for me to start expressing who I truly am. And that's when, like, I built an impression in the first year.
Yeah.
And second year onwards, I started doing a lot of extracurricular, even in the college, right? So we started doing a lot of stuff. And then by the time I was in third and fourth year, I was 70% of the time I was outside of the classroom doing stuff, like either planning for the next event, either planning for the next conference, either, whatever, right? So all kind of stuff, I was doing all of that, right? So second year, because I was doing, and then all of a sudden when that new identity started coming out, people like, oh, this guy, he's not only talented in academics, but he's also really good with extracurriculars. And that's when they gave me, they awarded me with the most whatever best student in pharmacy. I studied pharmacy, so best student in pharmacy award. Third year, they gave me full fee waiver scholarship. And then final
Yeah.
year, I graduated with a job in hand from Sun Pharma, which is the largest pharma company. And even on that job, they selected some of the smartest kids from all over the country, and there were, I think, 70 people that they onboarded, for the job. And then they sent us to Baroda in their training academy. And all these kids are toppers, right? So now all of a sudden I'm amongst like cream of cream, right? So these are like the toppers, and academically who've
Yeah.
done really well are the people who are selected for this job. And on that batch, again, I ended up topping that batch. And so there was the very senior professor of university who had joined as the head of the training department of that organization, and he awarded me with the dean's award of that batch. And then after 3 months, we got inducted into the job. And on that job as well, within first year, I got promoted. So yeah, I mean, that's been the sort of a journey of coming from sort of Nepal and trying to find my place in Delhi, and trying to understand India. But yeah, I mean, I started loving the country and the possibilities here. So yeah.
I think it was absolutely amazing just listening to your story of you being able to move from Nepal all the way to India to study and to pursue your dreams. I think you also mentioned some challenges you faced of the language barrier. How were you able to cope with it, and did you eventually try to learn Hindi? I mean, I'm sure you had to learn to some extent, but
Of
how was
course,
it
now
for you?
I'm very proficient, and there's no other way about it. And of course, I started understanding it. It's not something that it was very difficult, but of course, like I never understood why jalebi hoti hai and gulab jamun hota hai, but except for those, I pretty I speak Hindi. A lot of people won't be able to now make out. It's been almost 12 years,
Yeah.
but yeah, I think I started understanding Hindi, even like I understand Haryanvi very well. So yeah.
That's great. That's really, really great. I also wanted to talk to you about, you have a podcast like me. I'm sure that's doing much better. And it's called The Inspiring Podcast, correct? The Inspiring
The
Talk.
inspiring part. Correct.
Yes, yes. So can you tell me a bit about why you started it and, what was the motto behind starting that podcast?
Yeah. So you heard the story from me coming to Nepal and then getting
Yeah,
into that job, right? Now, when you
yeah,
heard that story, what it sounds like is, hey, here is this average student with 68% and topped his college, did all of that stuff, got the job in the best pharma company, and
yeah,
got placed in
yeah,
the research, and then my job title was a research scientist, right? So I was working in a pharma company in lab as a research
yeah,
scientist. For
yeah,
me at that point of time, like, last 5 years, 4 years in the college and almost like 1 year of doing this job looks like a dream. I have like done
yeah,
so much in last 4 5 years, right? And it felt like an achievement. And I was running and I was winning the race. And this is something that I say often, that but I never stopped and asked myself that, but was this the race that I wanted to run? And the answer was no, this is not the race that I wanted to run, right? Even though I've been winning this race, but this was not meant for me. So 1.5 years of doing that job, I started feeling frustrated at that job because I realized that I'm not the type of person who can be bounded, by the four walls and work in the
walls,
lab
yeah.
in silos and just play with chemicals all day long. And that's not me,
So
and
you're the
that's something that
person to
I
think outside
realized.
the box all the
Yeah.
time, basically. Yeah.
So I started realizing that 1.5 years after that. And then I asked myself, if I don't want to become a research scientist anymore, then what do I want to be? And the answer that came from within was, I don't know. All right.
Hmm.
You don't want to be a research scientist anymore and you don't know what you want to do next. Then what can I do about it? And the answer, and then I arrived at like, okay, then let me ask people who have figured out what they wanted to do in their life. Let me ask them, hey, how did you figure out what you wanted to do in your life? And let me have those conversations and let me start recording those conversations. And that time so when I was in the first year of my college, because I wanted to motivate myself, right? Because I wanted to be the topper, right?
Yeah.
So Robin Sharma, who is a great leadership coach, and also who'd written a bunch of books like The Monk Who Sold His Ferrari and so on and so forth. So on his website, he used to upload a lot of audio files. I don't know if he called them podcasts, but they used to be audio files, which I used to download on my Samsung Java phone that I had back in my college, and I used to download it on that phone, and then I would go on a jog every morning listening to those audios to just motivate me, right? And that's when I'm like, oh, you know what? I used to listen to those audio, and that was pretty cool, and I want to do that. And for me to start a podcast, I can pretty much do that from my bedroom. And that's
Yeah.
how the idea of the Inspiring Talk came about, where I'm like, I want to get inspired by people's journey, and maybe in that journey, I might find the answer that I've been answer that I've been looking for to figure out my own life. So that's how the podcast, the Inspiring Talk, came about in 2017. Um,
Yeah.
yeah.
So I think it's pretty similar to what the reason why I've started the Success Show is because I want to know people's insights on how they've made it in life. And that's something that, is my number one goal, to make it in life. Of course, everyone has different definitions of success. I was going to come to that and ask you what's your definition of success and how do you classify success?
I think, Ruhan, over the time, the definition of success has sort of evolved and sort of changed, right? So I'm in early 30s, and I'm, now this is the time that, I've also started looking a bit at the spiritual side of things and so on and so forth. So I see things from a very different perspective than, I saw it when I was that kid who wanted to talk, who wanted to be the best in everything and so on and so forth. Right? So I saw all of that as success. I saw, when I was doing the podcast, the way I saw success was like, okay, I got this big guest as a guest of my, on my show, and so on and so forth. But now I think success for me is, being able to do what I want to do, and also without the pressure of, oh, you know what, karna pad raha hai, I'm having to do it, what I want to do it, and do it fully. So
Yeah.
success for me is that freedom, and the other internal aspect, internal metric of success for me is the joy and the bliss, internal bliss that, one has. So I think these are the, one is external would be like the freedom to do what I want to do, when I want to do, with whom I want to do, and the internal
Yeah.
metric of success is, am I joyful? Am I happy doing this? Am I content with, what I am doing or where I am headed at this
Yeah.
moment, right? So I think that is like a, definition of success for me, and of course it has evolved. If you asked me like, a few years back, I would have possibly said that, success for me is like accomplishing this thing and that thing, and da, da, da. It would possibly have been about all accomplishments and stuff like that. Now it's more about freedom, to do whatever I want to do, and the inner, and am I finding the joy in doing what I'm doing? So
Yeah, I think that is a lot of people's definition of success, of doing what they love and doing what they aspire to do. And I also completely relate with you when you say that. Can you tell me? I want to know a bit because I am in the podcasting industry, if you say, and I really, really want to grow this podcast personally. So, can you say, can you tell me a bit about the podcasting industry and what its future holds for the country in India specifically?
yeah, so I think, now in the last 1.5 years, I started my podcast back in 2017, and I have pretty much seen the podcast industry from the front seat, and all the, all the stuff that's been happening in the industry. So I
Yeah,
think last 1.5 years, pretty much everybody has, pretty much everybody have jumped into this medium. Everybody is, creating podcast because long form content is here to stay, right? And people are seeking for different perspectives. People are looking for that insight, and people are looking to learn from each other's experiences, right? And that's why we see a lot of people are jumping into podcasting. For also, for the other reason is also the retention. The, if I asked you what are the last 20 reels that you watched, or 5 reels, or the last reel that you watched, you won't even remember. But if I asked you what are the last podcast episode that you watched or listened, then you would remember, because the sheer amount of time you spent with that podcaster and that guest, right?
yeah,
Because you would have spent at least 15, 20, 30 minutes. So because of which that, it is becoming a really interesting medium to bring your audience much closer to you, and also to bring, also to like form that strong connection with your audience. So from that perspective, I see for the next 1 to 2 years, we'll see a lot of podcasts come in. But also, what will happen is a lot of these podcasts are going to get filtered out. The
yeah,
podcasts that are, that are just, that have that, so today, the other thing is, today a lot of people think that starting a podcast is about, okay, I can buy a microphone, get guests on the other side, and talk any garbage, and people will listen to it. A lot of these shows are gonna, like, sort of wean off, and you will see, the dust will settle. And the ones that are really good, where there is like a lot of depth in the conversation, or there's a lot of perspectives that people can gain out of that show, those are the kind of shows that you will see, still grow and thrive, for the next 2 years for sure. So that is something that I can definitely see. Audio podcast didn't pick up in India, but video
yeah,
podcasts are doing really well now. Any form of content, that's like, if you look at Instagram right now, a lot of reels that are performing are the podcast cutouts. Even if you go on YouTube right now, every other content that you discover is a podcast or conversation between people. So which is a
yeah.
clear sign that, this is something that's working really well. And I think long form content will continue to do good.
Yeah, I think I definitely agree with you on this because, when I was starting my podcast, the idea came from, do you know of Mr. Raj Shamani?
Yeah, I do.
So he's been like my constant idol and role model to actually start this podcast. And I just opened YouTube and I got you get the suggested page that of random videos. So one of his podcasts was, I think, with Badshah or Honey Singh, or one of the celebrities. And so I clicked on it and I ended up listening to the whole thing, even though it was about 1 hour plus. And from that day on, I just every day I used to pick any one of his podcasts, let it be with an army officer or any entrepreneur, anyone, and I used to just listen to it. And that's when I can completely relate to what you're saying about video content being the future of podcasting, basically.
Correct.
So also about, I'd like to ask something a bit more personal when it comes to a podcast, because I wanted to know, do you think what I've done is correct of, starting online and then, once I'm able to grow my podcast, then, switching to in-person ones and investing in equipment and cameras and lighting, etc.
One, I think if you are jumping into this, don't see it as a 3 month, 6 month, or 9 month project, right?
Definitely not.
See it
Yeah.
as a like a 3 5 years sort of a thing. I'll give you example, right? So you are recording this from your college hostel or school
Yeah.
hostel rather, right?
Yes.
So I remember in 2019, a kid from Bits Pilani, 2019 or 2020, I guess, in 2020, a kid from Bits Pilani reached out to me and he said, Bijay, I'm a student in Bits Pilani. I want to record a podcast with you and understand everything about podcasting world and do this. I said, sure. And I generally tell people who reach out for the podcast, I say that, I will do on the 25th episode. But when somebody from school reaches out or colleges reaches out, and I'll just go it because I'm, like really encourage and support, people who are thinking differently while they are in their school and college. So I said, yeah, sure, I'm going to do this. And then I recorded that interview and he recorded that from his Bits Pilani hostel and, published that episode, and now half of my face is even chopped off on that interview. We were recording virtually, and whatever my camera angle was, half of it is chopped off, and whatever. So long to cut the long story short, that guy now, you know has so I'm talking about Ishan Sharma, who is the YouTuber, right? So now he has interviewed who's who. If you think, he has interviewed the likes of Ashnil Grover, to he recently interviewed Gary Vee.
Oh my
He's
god.
interviewed the founder of like AI startups like Notion
That's really impressive.
and so on and so forth, right? And all of that in 3 years, and that started as a side project for him while he was in the college. And he said, "Let me just talk to people." And now in 3 years, he's like traveling the world. And in one of the podcasts, he mentioned that he's making 35 lakhs a month.
That's
So I
amazing.
think it's and that's exactly how he started. You should actually go and check the interview that he has done. Maybe just type Bijay Gautam Ishan Sharma, and you will see like that video of how my face is chopped and stuff like that. So everybody start there. If I remember my time when I started my podcast, I was in Delhi, and you know how hot Delhi can be. So
Yeah.
I wouldn't turn on fan or AC. I didn't have even AC. I was like, I had cooler in the room, so I was turn off like cooler, fan, and everything. And I just like, I remember the time when I was interviewing, at that time, Vidya Vox, who was really big on
Hmm.
YouTube, and she was singer, and I said like, oh, I really made it. Like Vidya Vox said yes, and I interviewed Vidya Vox on my, on my whatever, I was not even wearing a T-shirt, like because the camera was off. It was just a audio interview, and it was so hot that I couldn't even put my T-shirt on. I was just like recording her. So so everybody start there. I would say, just the only thing that I would say, just don't stop, keep going, and even if you're not getting any viewers, even if you're not getting anybody listening to you, but see it from a perspective of like, what is the kind of network that you're going to build in next 3 5 7 years of doing this. Like if you're doing one every week, then while being in your own school, you're of course networking with your friends in school. You have also networked with 50 really interesting people in different domain while you are in your
Exactly.
school. In
Yeah.
5 years, that number is going to be 200 people. And let's say if you ever wanted like a job, or if you wanted a business idea and you wanted somebody to invest in your business, everybody saw that, oh, you know what, Ruhan was a really interesting guy. He, really worked hard to get me on his podcast. He was prepared. He did it very well. So I'm more than happy to hear his idea. Or if you are looking for a job, like I'm more than happy to hire him, because everybody is looking at hiring or working with people who take initiatives. And that's exactly what you are doing, right? So even if you get zero views for like next 5 years, but you would have built a very very powerful network of
Network. Yeah.
250 people, and imagine the kind of possibilities that you're going to open for yourself. A lot
Yeah.
of the lot of people that who became my clients are the people whom I had interviews. The people whom I started business with are my podcast guests. The people whom I go to seek advice if I need any in my life, in any area of my life, are the people who have become
Yeah.
guests on my podcast.
Yeah.
So the some of the good friends that I have are the people who came first as a guest on my podcast. Even in the last company that I was running, the person who invested in the company was the person who became guest on the podcast first. And even today, like, if anybody invites me to their event and so on and so forth, it's because I invited that person on my podcast. They said, hey, you know what, I had a great conversation with BJ. I want to The people who introduced me to the kind of concepts that I would have possibly never known are the people who became guests on my podcast. The people who put me on the path of spirituality are the people who became guests on my podcast. The people who gave me insights on relationship or any kind of stuff that's going on in my life are the people who became guests on my podcast. Now imagine
Yeah.
doing that for like 10 years, and look at the kind of network that you would need to expand. So I would say that if you just keep that one thing as like a core metric, then none of the other metrics, like how many views, likes, and so on and so forth, I'm not discounting that, but this would then become your motivating factor, that you know what, I'm getting to hear these very interesting stories from these people. And you know what, I have never thought about success in that way. This person thinks about. And if anybody is saying that, you know what, this is my definition of success, then when somebody is in 30, they would have a very different. If you talk to somebody who is in their 20s, they would be very different definition. And when you get somebody who have done it all, achieved everything that they wanted to achieve in their life, and at the age of 50, when they're coming and giving you a definition of success, then you're like, oh, you know what, this person, have achieved everything. And for him, everything that he achieved is not a definition of success. There is something else, right? And the
Yeah.
condensed lessons that you are getting from each person's life, I think that's way more valuable.
Definitely. I think, one thing I've learned from everyone who I've spoken to, even though this is, just my sixth episode, but I've learned that networking is key, and, you have to really maintain it, and, stay in touch with the other people that you're, interacting with. So is there, I just want one piece of advice that, you can give me to maintain networks with other people. For example, if I did an episode with X person, how do I maintain that rapport and connection? I do basic things of, sending them when I reach 75k streams on all platforms. I send them like a small note saying I've done this, or I say catch my latest episode. Is there anything
Yeah.
else you think I should do, or
Always
for
think
that matter,
about.
anyone?
Yeah, I think you have a really really good example of the friend who recommended me to you, right? So so that's your friend, others. So he knew
Yeah.
me. He never texts me. He never spams me. He never does this, right? Out of blue, he came and said that, hey, my friend Ruhan, he does a podcast and he wants to interview you. Would you be interested? Now, if you
Yeah.
think about it, he came to me in a way by bringing an opportunity. You see what I'm saying, right? So if he spammed me and stuff like that, then I would possibly ignore, like, this guy keeps on spamming me with all the information and stuff like that. But when he came to me, he sort of thought of like, okay, maybe this can be a value add to his life. So whenever you want to network with a guest, always go with something to offer. I'll give you an example, right? So whenever I reach out to any of my guests, then I will always go with like, hey, here's a speaking opportunity that you might want to explore. Hey, my friend is putting together an event and he's looking for speakers. Would you be interested? Or hey, my friend does a podcast and he's looking for guests. Since you've been a great guest on my podcast, would you be interested? Or hey, here's a
Yeah.
great, hey, I'm building this startup and da da da. Would you be interested? So when you go with these kind of opportunities, I think the people will automatically start thinking of you as somebody who adds value in their life. So you want to be
Yeah.
someone who adds value,
Value.
not
Got it.
somebody who seeks value. So when you keep on adding value in someone's life, then that person will automatically add value. You don't even have to seek value from anybody. So be someone who adds value.
Okay, definitely. I think I just really learned a lot from what you just said, and I think it's really important to keep in mind adding value into someone's life rather than just seeking the value and just taking it from them. So I really do agree with you when you speak about that. So I also wanted to ask you about decision making. It's something that I've heard a lot, especially on my last episode where I spoke to the managing director of Jindal Stainless, and he just spoke about how important quick decisions are and how you have to be really swift with what you're doing and they have to be on point. Of course, there is always some room for mistakes, but you can't let that pile up. So, is there anything you could tell me about decision making in your life and how important it has been for you?
I think I have been on the other spectrum, which is something that I have I've been learning for the last couple of years. Is oftentimes we don't make decisions, whatever that decision could be, right? Whether the decision to leave the relationship that you are in and you know that you want to leave, or start a business or move cities, and or maybe hire somebody or you want to fire somebody and stuff like that, right? So a lot of those things, that you should be doing it, but yet you don't do it because you are either scared of the possible outcomes, or you are like too worried about what the other person might think,
Thing.
or
Hmm.
you feel that, hey, what, I don't want to hurt someone. But in doing so, and by not taking that decision, or whether it's a decision to like, hey, what, I just want to walk up to somebody and tell them that I'm hurt, or tell them that I like you, or whatever that is, right? In that indecisiveness, you are missing a lot of opportunity, right? You take a decision, you just got past that, you are not stuck there. Not taking a decision is, you are stuck there, right? So for instance, I wanted to move to Bombay, and this thought came to me like like several like couple of years back. But I have been sort of delaying this, thinking, contemplating, and and saying that, hey, what, setting up a team and everything in like Bombay is almost 2.5 3 times expensive, like as compared to Delhi. 10
Hmm.
number of things, right? But one day, like I just said that, okay, chuck it, I'm just gonna go and I'm just gonna take this decision and figure out whatever comes next, right? So, and now, like everything worked out the way I wanted, right? So the
Yeah.
same thing, like, hey, what, I wanted to quit my job and do podcasting full time, and that worked out in my favor. So I think, yeah, I mean, I'm learning that as I speak to you. But for me, it's like, in that indecisiveness you suffer a lot, and you don't have to. Of course,
Yeah.
you might take a wrong decision, but that's okay. But at least you moved a step ahead.
And you learn
So
from that the
so
wrong
it's
decision that
better,
you've made.
yeah, it's better to make 20 decisions and make like five wrong decisions than like just make five decisions,
Yeah.
you know,
Hmm.
and still, like you don't know if they are going to be the right decisions, right? There is, of course, going to be uncertainty at the end of it.
Yeah. I think you also just spoke about what one thing basically I learned from what you just said is, seize the moment and, make use of the opportunities that you get. Even if it's something that's far fetched, just go for it. And you never know that, it may work out in your favor.
Correct.
So you also mentioned a business that you like your business and startups that you're a part of. This is, I think, your second startup, correct? You had one earlier, and now you have Leverage X Media.
Correct.
So can you tell me a bit about anything that you've learned from your previous startup and that you've implemented in your new startup? Let it be a better way of raising funds, or some mistakes that you made in your previous startup that you want to change and improve in this one.
Yeah, I think one thing is oftentimes when you are founder and when you're somebody who's starting a business, it's easier for you to put everybody before you, right? So your employees comes first, and then your clients, and vendors, all the people, and then you are the last person. You prioritize yourself. So whether that's in terms of like paying yourself, you are right at the bottom of that, like pyramid, or whether whatever that is, right? So my number one learning is like just put prioritize yourself. So if you have to pay, then pay yourself first. Just the way they say on the airplane, right? Put your mask first before you put it on someone else. So I think if you as a founder, if you are not in that stage where you are taken care of first, everything else is not going to work. So that's been like number one. And the second lesson that I would say is, I think your values and your sort of words should not be used lightly. So then in doing, if you don't do that, then you are going to lose that respect in the market. So people are not going to take your words seriously. So if you say
Yeah.
something, and this is something that I've heard Ratan Tata say, that he said that, what, I don't use my words loosely. If I have said something, then consider it a contract signed. That level of integrity. If I said something, then consider it
It's done.
like I've signed it on a contract. I don't say it lightly. I think that is something that it's like absolutely like idol stays, right? Ideal stays. But we can of course, like try and be a little better, because and it shows in like smaller things, right? Hey, you know what, I'll come in 5 minutes. And then maybe we know that we're going to go in 10 minutes or 15 minutes, whatever that is, right? So I think that values and integrity, that's the second lesson that I would say. And the third one I would say is in terms of how you treat everybody. If you really want to build a great team, then let them, give them that that space to thrive. Give them that space to like really really work on their ideas and come up with that interesting ideas, and so on and so forth. And like and to this, what I would add is, treating your team as like a sports team, not as a family. There's a very
Yeah.
different, like if anybody says in that my company it's a family, then run away. Why? Because in family, you can't ask your dad, if you don't like them, or if they are not doing what they're supposed to do, to move out of the home. Or if you can't kick your son or daughter out of the home because they are not doing what they should be doing, or they are not behaving the way that they should be. You have to bear them. You have to like still let them
Be
be
that
around, because you
backbone.
just
Yeah.
can't kick them out. They are a family, right? So but organizations or the sports team, they doesn't function that way, right? No matter how amazing cricketer Virat Kohli is, if he doesn't perform in 2 seasons, then he's going to be questioned, or maybe he's even going to be dropped on the third season, even if you are
Yeah.
Virat Kohli, right? So similar thing applies to the team as well. No matter what your performance has been so far, but if you stop performing, then you can't possibly be part of the team. So, and same goes in also, like if no matter what your educational background or what your work experience is, but if you are performing really well, then you can be the captain of the ship. You can be the captain. You can be somebody who can lead this entire team, right? So it has got
Yeah.
nothing to do with your experience, nothing to do with how long you've been working with us, and so on and so forth. It's all about what is it that you deserve. So I think that's
Yeah.
the sportman mindset is
Mindset.
something
Yeah.
that.
Definitely. And lastly, I wanted to ask you about if you can give me some tips for public speaking. You are a speaker yourself, and for example, currently I have my council elections coming up, and for public speaking, any tips you have for students like me who are also giving their council speeches, let it be from my school or any other schools?
Yeah, so I think so the best place is I don't know if you guys know about this organization called Toastmasters. I think that's a great place to learn public speaking. So they
Hmm.
don't teach you; they have their own modules and stuff like that. So it has got nothing to do with making toasts. But do check out. It's called Toastmasters International, and I think at your age, I would recommend everybody to join Toastmasters to learn public speaking. That's one. And second, when it
Okay.
comes to public speaking, I think a lot of it said that a lot of people fear public speaking, but I think the first one is to like really start overcoming that fear. Walk up to the stage and make start being comfortable being in front of people. So start do not just ask yourself, am I going to die if I failed here? So I think the biggest reason why a lot of people fear public speaking is because they fear the shame. They fear what other people are going to think about you. They fear what if I failed, and what if I made a fool of myself. But if you
Yeah.
really think about it, people are going to forget that in 2 minutes. People are not going to remember, like, even if you bombed, even if you went there and if you couldn't say a single word, nobody's going to even remember that. So because
Hmm.
all of us are so busy thinking about ourselves. So I think taking that opportunity to like really go and I think the simple tip would be, nobody can teach you public speaking. The only way to learn public speaking by going and walking on the stage over and over again, right? So the more
Yeah.
you do it, the more the better you become. So I think the only thing that I would say is just keep doing more.
Yeah. Thank you so much. I think in terms of having a great conversation, I really enjoyed this, and I wanted to do a quick rapid fire round with you, ask you about 8 to 10 things, and make this a little more fun. Uh, you know, Delhi or Kathmandu, which city feels more like home for you? I mean, I know you just moved into Bombay, so I didn't want to mention that.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, Bombay feels like home,
Oh,
but I
really?
think, yeah, I love Bombay that much. So it's already, it already feels like home. But if I were to compare,
Hmm.
Delhi and Kathmandu, I think, um, I think I would go with Kathmandu.
Hmm. Okay. First podcast episode that you ever recorded. Were you more nervous or more excited?
So I did that with like somebody who I knew, not like
Yeah.
exactly friend, but I was familiar with him. So I was excited, and actually the way I did my first episode, I pretty much read one question after another. So I was excited and nervous both, but I think I was more excited.
Okay. One habit that transformed your life.
Meditation.
I've heard that from the past three guests in a row
And
of
you will
talking about
hear that a
meditation.
lot. You will hear that a lot, and I have heard that from so many guests. And I
Yeah.
think the sooner you start, you will start realizing the power of it. Like, start with 5 minutes. If you don't do it already, start with 5 minutes. You will realize that compounding effect of meditation.
Yeah. One book that changed your mindset.
The psychology of money. That book
I've
really
heard
helped me
that a
to
lot
define
as well.
about money. Yeah.
Uh, I mean, I know this may be a little political, but favorite podcast guest so far that you've recorded with?
So there are quite a few. So so I interviewed this podcast with there are quite a few actually. Like, because I've interviewed so many people. So one, so when you say like which is the best conversation, there are like three, four that's popping up on my mind. The one that I would, if I have to pick, then I would go with Ron Malhotra. So there's a guy based out of Australia whom I have interviewed almost. I think I've interviewed him three times on my podcast.
Okay.
I love having conversation with him. The way he articulate things, his insights and opinions. I think they are really powerful. I love Ron.
Yeah. One success mantra that you follow religiously.
I think it's all about consistency and and how. how often do you show up? It's nothing to do with talent. It's nothing to do with anything else. It's just, like if you really look at when I was doing the podcast, I I had my accent was flawed. I had a very limited vocab and stuff like that. But just that I kept showing up one episode after another, and that's the only way to get better, and that's the only way to progress, I guess.
Yeah.
And I truly believe in it, like just consistency.
What's your go-to productivity hack?
Um, my productivity hack would be, I have actually found this app. I sometimes use it. So it's, what's the name, Focus Mate. So what it does is, it's essentially you jump on a Zoom call like this with random strangers. For example, let's say if I were to just come on this call and I don't know you, we'll just jump on a call and I'll say, okay, Ruhan, I'm going to work on like a pitch deck that I'm going to send to my client. And you will say,
Okay.
hey, BJ, I'm Ruhan. I'm going to be working on my homework. And,
Hmm.
both of us are going to either mute our camera mic or let it be on. And we're just going to work each other with a stranger is watching you, you are watching a stranger. And, 50 minutes you are there in this session, now that there is somebody watching you do stuff. So that has been a really interesting productivity hack. I was able to actually do a lot more in that 50 minutes than I would have possibly did in 4 hours.
Oh, really? So, also, I wanted to ask you who's the most influential person that you've ever, met through podcasting?
um Quite a few. I have met, CM of, not CM, LG of, Jammu and Kashmir. I have met
Hmm.
billionaires. I have met Nepal's billionaire. I have, had the opportunity to also meet another billionaire based out of USA of Indian origin. I
Hmm.
have met some celebrities like Neeraj Chopra. I have
Okay.
met, Kailash Kher, who is the singer. John T. Rhodes, who is a cricketer. So yeah, I mean, quite a few of these people. I think I'm
That's
remembering
great.
a lot of the names, but yeah.
Yeah. Lastly, if you could have dinner with one person, alive or dead, who would it be?
I think I would really like to have dinner with Naval Ravikant because
Okay.
I absolutely love the insights that he has shared. And actually the name Leverage X comes from, I don't know if you have, heard about Naval Ravikant or read about his
I've heard
work.
the name. I've definitely
You
heard
heard
the
the
name.
name. So he's an investor based out of US, and he talks a lot about leverage, and he talks about four types of leverage. And I love his wisdom and insights, and I'd love to, I think Naval Ravikant would be the one.
Yeah. Okay, this is the end of this episode. Thank you so much for, taking out the time to talk to me. And I was really flattered and impressed by the insights that you had. And I'm sure I'll be able to definitely use them in school or in my personal life as well. So thank you so much for being on the show. I look forward to staying in touch with you.
Thank you, Rohan. Thank you so much, and congratulations on doing this at a very young age. And I wish I
Thank
started
you.
my podcast when I was your age. But I think I wish you all the success, and I hope my only hope is you continue doing this.
I definitely will.
Because I know that this is going to put you on a completely different trajectory on your life. All the best.
Thank you so much.